Hey everyone, so the question for today is, can you use a wakizashi two-handed? So we've talked about using a katana one-handed. Now, can you use a wakizashi two-handed? And the answer is probably yes. So if you can fit two hands on it, then theoretically you can use it two-handed. And you see with the Chinese Jen clasp grip, even if you can't fit two hands on it, you can still use it two-handed. So theoretically any sword can be used two-handed. However, there is a counter argument to that. Some people say that because the handle of the wakizashi isn't long enough, you can't effectively do a push-pull motion to get an effective cut. So my two-handed cutting is not perfect, it needs a lot of work. So I figured if I can cut with a wakizashi two-handed, the average swordsman can quite easily. So I went and I tried it, and I'll show you some footage from it. So now it's pretty clear that you can, but the question is, should you cut with a wakizashi two-handed, and why would anyone do it? So when we compare it to using a katana two-handed, there's clearly a lot of downsides. It's got a lot less power than the katana, it's obviously got a lot less reach than the katana, and an interesting thing that I noted when cutting two-handed with the wakizashi is that it was slower on the rising cuts, both than the katana using two-handed and also the wakizashi using it one-handed. Which was really interesting, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is compared to the katana, because it's not as long, then at the end it doesn't have the same rotational velocity to speed it up. And compared to the wakizashi, then one-handed, you have a lot more body mobility to speed things up, whereas when you have it two-handed, then that's a little bit more restricted. So with all of these downsides, are there any advantages to using a wakizashi two-handed? And the answer is, well, yes, if you compare it to using a wakizashi one-handed. So you've obviously got more power and more control using it in two hands and compared to one hand. And the other thing is that a wakizashi doesn't have to always be stuck in two hands. You can swap between it being one-hand use and two-hand use. And you see that in Korean sword forms. It's basically the Asian hand-and-a-half sword. So you have Korean sword forms where you go from a rising cut into a downwards cut with two hands. So yes, two-handed wakizashi use was used pretty commonly with Korean sword forms, and you see that pre-Imjin War, then most Korean swords were wakizashi length. They were between blade length 40 to 60 centimeters on average. Now during the Imjin War, then the Koreans saw the advantage of the longer Japanese katana length and also their adachi length, but they still kept their short wakizashi length handle. And the reason for that is because the sword is a secondary weapon. If you've got a really big handle, then it gets in the way of things and it's a little bit bothersome. So now with the same handle length, if you ask someone, would you like to handle this or this? And which one do you think you can handle better? Then I think most people for the same handle length will say that they can probably handle this one better. And so while objectively the katana length has more power, more speed, more reach, all the advantages, then if you feel like this is a weapon that you can't handle as well as another weapon and you're not familiar with it and it might get you killed, it is the worst weapon for you, even though it may be objectively better. So yes, it was done. Familiarity is a good enough reason for it to be done. However, if you are new and you don't have a particular bias towards wakizashi or katana and you want to learn two-handed sword forms, I highly recommend you learn it properly on the katana, because if you can use a katana two-handed, you can use a wakizashi two-handed. It doesn't necessarily go the other way. So I'll put up the rest of the footage from me cutting with the two-handed wakizashi on the pool noodles. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next time.